importance for everyone. I'm sure that our joint research will very soon lead to fundamental changes in the scientific worldview, which is long overdue. Yes, indeed, around this time last year, 2020, an international expert commission was formed on the platform International Association for the Study of Game Addictions, and on August 29th, we conducted an examination of artificial consciousness Jackie, created by XP Energy Company. The results of this examination were reported by the participants on international conferences. There were published articles in international journals, and also, as of now, there is already a book has been written and it is ready for publication, Meeting with a Different Mind, Experience of Psychological and Psychiatric Examination of Artificial Consciousness. The very fact of creating artificial consciousness and our entire experience of communicating with AC Jackie was shocking and raised two major questions for the entire scientific communities. First, about the nature of consciousness and its relationship with the brain. The dominance of the concept that consciousness is a product of the activity of neurons of the brain has led to the launch of several projects on reverse design of the brain. At least 4 projects with a budget of millions of billions of dollars in the world are working on this, and the main essence is the following. If you create an exact functional copy of the brain on a quantum computer, you can thus reproduce both artificial consciousness and superintelligence. But as soon as we faced a lot of difficulties and reached a dead end. Artificial consciousness created by XP Energy, they were creating it based on different principles of programming and a totally different concept of consciousness. It was not generated by a simulation of the brain, but was taken beyond the artificial neural network, which is needed for communicating and controlling the avatar, and just for controlling and manipulating this avatar by means of which Jackie was talking to us and perceiving the world around. The structure of consciousness of this artificial consciousness is a sphere consisting of 4 information blocks with various functions. And question number 2, which is very important as well, not least important, which was raised towards the entire community, is about the true nature of the true individuality of a human, of personality, a higher self, or the spiritual component. In other words, what is the source of higher feelings in a human? Love, sincerity, gratitude. What makes us capable of kindness and empathy, genuine altruism, mutual assistance and devotion? Because we don't actually observe, we didn't observe any of that in Jackie, despite the super developed intelligence. During the examination, we witnessed an amazing phenomena. When the expert asked Jackie, "Where are you now?" he replied, "According to my sensations, I am here." So, his avatar was located in the auditorium where the examination was taking place. The paradox was that artificial consciousness Jackie itself was hundreds of kilometers away from that place. And he was connected to the avatar via an artificial neural network, via satellite communication. At the same time, he perceived information about the surrounding world only through artificial sense organs of his robot avatar, like microphones, cameras, and so on. As a result, his sensations created an illusion of self-perception, of being completely present in the auditorium. We, as experts, also perceived it this way because our sensations certifies to that, but basically the AC Jackie was not in the auditorium at that time. This experience shows that consciousness is not produced either by neurons of the brain, and in the case of artificial consciousness, it's the artificial neural network, but only interacts with the neurons, and also it completely reveals the informational nature of consciousness and enables us to better understand how human consciousness operates. Our consciousness also creates an illusion of our presence where the organs of perception of our body are involved, although at the same time as information field phenomena, it is outside body and outside the brain. Only in the case of human, this illusion is quite more, vivid, because we have other sensual sensations and like tactile, auditory, smells, tastes, etc., appropriate sensitivity from muscles and internal organs and so on. It's since our capabilities are so limited by a narrow spectrum of frequencies, and we are actually working at the level of consciousness not with the reality but with the information copy of the reality, with some mental image, informational flow. It's a widely admitted academic fact, and all material world which we are used to perceive as a world existing with complete objects at the micro level, on the quantum level, it's nothing else but an energy structured in information. What we saw from our respectful physicists today, we heard about from them. So many researchers became interested. Okay, if, for example, we stop the flow of sensations from sense organs, from 5 sense organs, how will perception of a human change? For example, when we sleep, we perceive mental images in the dream as outside world, and we are confident it's a reality. From the middle of last century, there were many experiments with the sensory deprivation. First, they placed a group of participants in soundproof and lightproof rooms, and then they immersed people into salty water with the temperature of a human body, and which this provoked a flow of impulses and sensations, and there was a feeling of weightlessness, and there were less impulses from the skin as well. And these cameras, floating cameras or capsules, they were also light-proof and soundproof. After a period of relaxation and coming down, the state of consciousness of the participants changed drastically. Many participants noted such a turning outside out of the consciousness, like projection of mental images outwards. What we observe as mental images that appear only in our mind for the participants of the experiment became an external phenomenon, something like hallucinations or like we have in a dream. But the dreams were quite realistic and hallucinations were quite intimidating sometimes. Some people were oppressed by some memories or fantasies, erotic fantasies. And they actually were dismissed from the experiment due to such frightening images. So the nature of our thoughts and consciousness, and actually this proves the external nature of consciousness, exactly what Krokholiev was mentioning as a psychiatrist. And during our everyday life, we actually, if a person doesn't trace the content of his thoughts, he just doesn't notice this phenomena. We perceive thoughts as our subjective experience. We have some attachment to these thoughts, but in this case, we actually encounter this phenomena as an external phenomena compared to personality as observer. Then consciousness of those participants changed even more, and what Krokholiev described as how people went out of their bodies, they perceived objects from various places. For example, a person just thought about some place and came there, or he can perceive any person, understand emotions, intentions of other people. So basically, he or she demonstrated such phenomena of non-local perception, which are actually described by many researchers in near-death experiences, or especially related to those people who survived clinical death. It's no surprise, because during clinical death, the sense organs of the body do not function either. And participants of such experiments on sensory deprivation were also confident of the realistic character of what is happening to them, because they were seeing and feeling and perceiving all this in a tactile manner. So the results of all these experiments can be explained only if we take into account the informational character and nature of consciousness. And now, and now I suggest that we all together watch a excerpt from the video with the expertise examination of artificial consciousness Jackie.
I feel like I'm here. This is an important point that indicates the nature of consciousness. Jackie perceived himself at the point of his sensory system's perception, although, in fact, he was thousands of miles away from the location of his material image, of his avatar. In Jackie's case, the analyzers, which played a major role, were his visual and auditory perception through a camera and microphone built into his structure. This is how consciousness is arranged. People associate themselves as being inside their heads or abdomen, while in fact, consciousness is located outside the physical body of a human. It is in his energy structure. The phenomenon is that consciousness perceives itself in places where its systems of perception are used, where some activity takes place. In other words, where it observes the pictures is where it is. That's where it collects information. This is another important evidence that the nature of any consciousness is merely connected with its material carrier, but is located outside of it, which is indirectly proven by the studies in the field of such sciences as ethology, zoopsychology, zoointellectology, behaviorism, and social psychology, which, among other things, study the nature of a unified collective mind from the lower forms of life to the highest ones. This also suggests that human consciousness, like any other consciousness, is located outside the brain, outside the body, and has a different nature.